is a distance in the light, vibrations of a thundercloud. There is a distance in the light, frozen bed of snow-capped heights. There is a distance in the light, vibrations of a thundercloud.
Hello, loved ones. This is Matt Stevens, and this is the My Sober Addiction podcast. And of course, dear loved ones, we are happy, we are healthy, we are wealthy, we are loved, and we are oh so free. I just recorded a podcast with Clive and Dom. Super excited about that. I know that I have not been releasing podcasts on the regular lately, but it's okay. And I just recorded one with them, and it went great. Dom is always, his insight is always good to have. I mean, it just is. Dom, he makes you think of things that you might not have otherwise thought of. But it's usually things that are obvious. That's kind of the beauty of it. It's like, well, yeah, that's just common sense. We should be able to figure that out. But it's like, well, it's a very good thing that he's here because you didn't think of it there, Matt. Yeah, it is something that is kind of obvious in your face and you should have thought of, but you didn't. So thankfully, Dom is there to point those things out. And it's like, damn, I'm glad you said that. So there's that. And that episode, it may have, I'm not sure which one I will release first, this one, that one, I don't even know. I record these and sometimes I never release them. This one I do intend to. I've actually written a series of questions that it kind of inspired me to get on here and do this. I almost feel like it was divinely inspired because a question just popped into my mind, and it is a question for myself and for anybody who has been through addiction. It's like, have you forgiven yourself? Right? Because when we're getting sober, when we're going through the steps or whatever the case may be, we do focus on forgiving, just forgiveness, right? But have you forgiven yourself for doing this? Because in a lot of cases, we wasted years. In a lot of cases, we burnt bridges or we ruined relationships. Now, hopefully, in most cases, we can get those relationships back. That's part of getting sober is, if not necessarily fully restoring those relationships, at least maybe planting the seed or or at least drawing the blueprint for the new bridge that we burnt, right? But anyway, have you forgiven yourself for doing this? Have you forgiven yourself for all those years that were wasted that you cannot get back? Have you forgiven yourself for missing family functions or vacations or just time with the kids or time with the family? There's some people who have been through addiction and they got sober only to really realize, it's not that they didn't know, but at that point is when it hits them. I lost certain relatives or certain loved ones, certain people who were important to me, passed on while I was in that state. And I missed them, and I really wish I had spent those last few moments or those last few days or whatever the case may be with that person. But for whatever reason, maybe we weren't talking because they were angry with me because of this or that, or maybe I just, for whatever reason, addiction got in the way and we were not able to be there, right? That's a tough one. That's a very hard one to work yourself through. It's like if you lost a relative during that time and you then look back on it, think, geez, if I hadn't have been strung out on dope in that person's last whatever time, I could have been there. I could have been there with them and spent those last few days or whatever the case may be. But because I was being stupid and using drugs and all that and living that lifestyle, I couldn't be. Right? And then when you got the call that it had happened, well, of course, if you were still in active addiction, you still didn't deal with it then. You didn't deal with it. No, it's like, anytime something bad happens when we're in active addiction, well, then we just go use. We just go get some dope and check out. And that brings us back to the whole theory of, or it's not really a theory, I don't think, but the thing about our emotional maturity. You see, when a normal person, when they have a loss or whatever, something happens that they're going to have to deal with emotionally and mentally and all that, we do go through those things. And when we go through those things, we gain a certain amount of maturity. We become more adept at dealing with things. It's just we gain a certain amount of maturity. But when we don't deal with those things, well, then we don't gain any maturity. We don't gain any more wisdom. We don't gain any more insight in how to get through things like that when it happens in our life. So the example that I've used in the past is, let's take a person who is 20 years old and they are at the maturity level of a 20-year-old. And then they use for 10 years. Every time something happened between the ages of 20 and 30, instead of dealing with it, instead of getting better and more mature, they just went and used drugs, just went and got high, just covered it over with drugs. That 30-year-old who is now sober, thankfully, still has a maturity level of a 20-year-old because they've never dealt with anything over the last 10 years. And what compounds that is it's like, okay, well, now that I'm 30, now I'm going to go and deal with all those things, everything that's happened for the past 10 years, plus deal with the things that are happening now, and do it with the maturity level of a 20-year-old. Now, I will say that there is a learning curve. We eventually catch up to where we should be. I'm not saying you're going to stay at the maturity level of a 20-year-old the rest of your life. I'm not even saying that you're going to be 10 years behind your current age for the rest of your life. But I mean, that is a sliding scale anyway. Some 30-year-olds are more mature than some 50-year-olds, and vice versa. I mean, it is a sliding scale. It's very personal. But I do believe there's a learning curve. We do eventually catch back up. But when those things happen during your addiction, and then you had to go and deal with it, you were probably kind of hard on yourself. Man, if I had just been present, if I had just been there, if I had just been, not doing dope and doing dumb stuff and dealing with all these bad things that were happening with dope, if I had really just faced them head on and processed them and worked through them, I would have been I wouldn't be right now feeling this way. You've got to forgive yourself, dear loved one. We have to forgive ourselves so that we can move on with our lives, so that we can let those people go if it was the case of losing someone, right? We have to be able to let that person go. We have to be able to, not only that, but we need to be able to move on with our lives and have those happy memories and all of that. Like when someone first passes, it's very hard and it's sad and all that. But once we get past it, eventually, as I've told people before, eventually the sadness fades. I mean, you'll always miss the person, of course, but eventually the sadness fades and that's replaced with happy memories, right? It's like whenever I've lost, like say my grandma. At first, of course, I was sad and all that, but now I can laugh and and just share memories of my grandma. And yes, I miss her every day. I really do. But I've adjusted, right? We never really get over it. We just adjust. But I've adjusted to it and I've moved on from it. And now think back on just funny things or just bits of wisdom that my grandma shared with me over the years or whatever the case may be. Thankfully, that did not happen while I was in active addiction, so I don't have to forgive myself for that, but there are plenty of other things. That's just the question I have for you, dear loved one. Have you forgiven yourself for all the things that you missed, for the things that you could have done better or done right had you not been in active addiction? You've got to forgive yourself for those things. And also, since we're on the subject of forgiveness, have you forgiven the cause of your addiction? The thing that triggered it. There's usually something that happens in our life that we turn to drugs because it fills that void, it fills that hole. But whatever happened in our life, it was some bad event or some bad, whatever the case may be, the drugs just seem to fill that gap in our lives perfectly. Have you forgiven that cause? Have you looked at that cause and said, I lost a lot of great years of my life dealing with addiction because of that. But I still came out on the other side, and I learned a lot of things, and I'm able to share those things that I learned and hopefully inspire others who are in the same boat I was in, and maybe inspire them to get sober and inspire them to then be inspirations themselves for other people. You see, it may sound a little egotistical to say that we are inspirational, right? It's not something that we say about ourselves, but we do have to inspire others, dear loved one. There are people out there, and we lose more people than we save in addiction. So we don't have time to be modest. If you can be inspirational, then freaking be inspirational. And guess what, dear loved one? If you have been through active addiction and you came out on the other side, then you are inspirational. If that sounds egotistical or whatever, I'm not going to get into that. It doesn't matter. You are an inspiration. Be that inspiration. Share your story. Make sure people in active addiction know they're not alone. Because and I know dear loved one, that one of the hardest things about active addiction is feeling alone. We feel like we're completely alone in this. Nobody else has ever been through this. Nobody knows how this feels. There's no way I can get through this. And we know how silly that sounds. We know that, yes, you can. Yes, I can get through this. Other people have. Lots of other people have. And I know we think, yeah, that's true. But this one is mine. This particular case of addiction is my case of addiction. And maybe it's not any different. Maybe it's the same as everybody else's. But damn it, it looks impossible from where I'm sitting. But then after you finally humble yourself and realize I need help, and you go get the help you need, and you realize there are people out there who have been through it, and they inspire you. They're like, wow, if that guy did it, I'm going to, and we get inspired by other people who came before us and beat addiction. Well, now you're that person, and you need to share your story. You need to put your story out there. You need to put it out there so that other addicts who feel hopeless, who feel like there's no way they can get through this, that their case is different, that their case is just too big to beat. You need to put your story out there and show them, no, it's not. Here's my story, and it's not much different than your story. And the more of those there are out there in the world, the more stories we have of victory, of people getting free from addiction, the better. The more we have out there, the more the merrier. Bring them on. Let's have them all, right? Next question, though, dear loved one, is have you accepted the fact that it happened? Have you accepted the fact that whatever caused you to start using, if you accept the fact, yes, that happened, and it's there, it's ugly, it's in my past, but it did happen, and I'm going to get over it. I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to be mad at it. I'm just going to leave it there and acknowledge the fact that yes, that happened, and it's there. It's kind of like when we're in meditation and we have thoughts. We acknowledge those thoughts. We don't have to chase them down. We don't have to analyze them. We just allow thoughts to come in and drift out, just like a cloud in the sky. We allow it to come drift in. We acknowledge it. Oh, yeah, there's one. And we allow it to drift away. We don't have to chase it down. Same thing for, have you accepted whatever it was that caused it? Acknowledge it. Yes, that happened. And I'm going to just let that go and move on. I got to move on. We've got to move on, right? But we can accept the fact that whatever that was did happen. We also have to accept the fact that we fell into the throes of addiction. We got to a point where we were leaning on a substance to cope with some thing that happened. Maybe it's emotional, maybe it's, whatever the case may be, some kind of abuse, whatever it may be. We have to accept the fact that you, dear loved one, as a person, you had this thing happen to you, and you physically turned to a physical substance as a means of escaping that thing that happened. See, that's kind of ugly. When we realize that, when we look at it that way, it's like, damn, I couldn't deal with something. Am I that weak? Am I that just sucky of a person where I couldn't deal with that? That I had to go and get myself addicted, physically addicted, and mentally and all that, to some substance in order to deal with it? I mean, that's pretty pathetic. When you look at it that way, it's like, damn, was I that damn pathetic that I had to do that? Wow. And I know that you might be thinking, well, damn, man, you're being kind of hard on. It's true, though. I look at it myself and think, God, dude, were you that damn weak? Where, yeah, what happened was it sucked. Okay. And no, you didn't want to have to deal with it. Nobody wants to have to deal with things. That's why drugs fill that hole perfectly, temporarily. And they created a whole other hole, but we're not going to go there right now. But we got to look at this thing and realize that it is as ugly as it can possibly be. And accept it and leave it there. Like, yeah, give it some acknowledgement. Say, yep, that cause happened. And yep, that substance abuse, that substance addiction happened. Yep, that is part of my past. It's part of what shapes the person I became. Now that I have gotten on this side of addiction, I am going to share with whoever needs to hear it that whole story. Because there are people out there who are looking at their own situation, as I said, and they're thinking, nobody knows how this feels. Trust me, there are lots and lots of people, thousands and thousands of people who know exactly how it feels. You're not alone. The addiction would like for you to believe that you're alone so that you feel hopeless, but you're not hopeless. There's a lot of hope. And how can you, dear loved one, what have you learned from your experience? And how can you grow from it? What have you learned about yourself? I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about a lot of things through addiction. I can't imagine who or what I would be had I not fallen into addiction. And I know that there may be some people, particularly people, loved ones of mine, who could hear me say that and say, Matt, I don't like that you said that, because you're basically saying that you're going through addiction was a good thing because it shaped you into the person you are, and you can't imagine what kind of person you would have been had you not ever found addiction. Yeah, I am kind of saying that. But it's like, well, it doesn't really matter because it did happen. It is in my past. It is part of what built the person that I am. What person would I be right now at this time had I never found opioid addiction? I don't know. I don't know. It's It's kind of a fascinating question, I suppose. Obviously, it's pure speculation. I don't know, and there's no way I could know. What and who would I be right now had I never found addiction? Because remember, dear loved one, I was a late bloomer. I was late to the game. I didn't start using until I was like 30, 31, something like that. I can't remember exactly. But I was a late bloomer. I didn't start in my teens. I didn't even start in my 20s for that matter. I mean, sure, in my early 20s, bachelor partying years, whatever. Yeah, I mean, there might have been a pill here and there with some alcohol, but it wasn't really addiction. It was just, that was just partying. Of course, I know in some cases that's how it began, but that's not what I'm getting at. But when I actually found addiction and, getting high and just checking out was a great coping mechanism, temporarily, of course. But that happened when I was right around the age of 30. Here we are 20 years later ish. It's like, who would I be right now if I had never done that? I haven't got a clue. I don't. And it might be fun to speculate, maybe just funny, but it doesn't even matter because this is who I am. And I had to go through a lot. I had to put a lot of people through a lot to become this, but it worked out. So, but what have you learned from this experience? And how, not can you, because you definitely can, but how can you grow out of this experience? What have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about your own resilience? What have you learned about your own weaknesses? What have you learned about how you can help and inspire others? What did you learn? And how can you grow out of this, right? Because we are definitely growing. I'm growing in a way that, I'm learning to share my story. I'm learning to say the things that a lot of addicts think, or at least feel, but don't want to say. You see, most people don't want to get onto a public medium such as this and say things and admit, I was an opioid addict. Yes, I was snorting drugs or shooting drugs in gas station bathrooms. They don't want to admit things like that because it's freaking ugly, and they don't want the people that are around them to know that they did that. It's like, damn, you were that guy, you were that junkie that had his arms all freaking bruised up because of freaking needles. You were doing that shit in bathrooms? Public bathroom, gas station bathroom? Yes, I was. Or in a car, in an apartment complex parking lot. Just stuff like that. As ugly as it may be, it's true. So, I'm becoming the person that will say the things that hopefully help other addicts that don't really want to say those things. They'll finally at least admit it. Yeah, I did those things to themselves, but they don't really want to put it out to the world, but they do like to hear that it's out there. I've kind of taken it upon myself. I'm going to be the guy that gets on here and says that. So it's like writing the memoir or doing this podcast. It's a labor of love. These are things that it's like, this is something I wish I had had when I was detoxing. These are things that I wish I had had while I was writing it out, sweating it out, being sick as hell for weeks and months at a time, or at least in withdrawal. Maybe not necessarily sick for months, but you know what I mean, dear loved one. But can you share what you've learned with others? Maybe not in a public way like this. I understand why people wouldn't want to do this. Sometimes I ask myself, why in the hell do you do this? You're putting some pretty being pretty vulnerable in a very wide open public way where people from all around the world can listen to this. Yeah. I guess somebody's got to do it. I don't know. I just feel that this is what I am supposed to do. I feel called to. It's a labor of love. But what can you do to inspire other addicts? To me, I think it is making them realize you are not alone. I know you feel alone. I know you think there's no way somebody could possibly understand what I'm going through. And then, it's like, that's silly. Of course there are. There's lots of other people who are addicts, and of course they are in the same boat I'm in. But whatever, we feel like, yeah, that may be true, but somehow this is just, mine's different. My case, my story it's just different. That's all. That's all, dear loved one. Anyway, so those are some questions that I had asked, and maybe we can call it a logic train. We kind of start with that first question of, have you forgiven yourself? And then that series of questions and answers. And I hope that those series of questions and answers gives you some clarity into your own psyche, into your own soul, and maybe helps you to understand how important your story is. Your story is so important. You have got to share that. As I said, not necessarily in a public forum such as this, but there are people out there who need your support. You can maybe get on some kind of support groups online or go to meetings or whatever the case may be, but there are people out there who would really like to hear your story. They need to hear your story. They need to hear how you got through this, and know it wasn't easy, and sometimes it's still not easy, but you're doing it. And that is inspiring. That is amazing. You, dear loved one, are an amazing success story. You really are. I'm proud of you. I know the people around you who love you, whether they actually say it or not, I know they're proud of you. Depending upon how long it's been since you began using it, or quit using, I guess is better what I was really looking for. But it's like the people around you, they may still be at the cautiously optimistic phase where they're just kind of hanging around the perimeter and watching. It's like, oh, is he going to use again? Is she going to relapse? I hope not. She looks like she's doing good. He looks like he's doing really well. He's working a good job. He just bought a car, taking care of business, getting to see his kids again, right? Whatever, things like that. I heard she actually took her kids out for a dinner the other night and paid and did everything. Didn't have to use, saved money back for drugs. Those kinds of things. All those little stories like that, all that is inspiring. We've talked about this before. How many times did you go to the grocery store and think, ooh, I got to put this much back because I've got to have my dope in the morning, right? But now it's like, no, I go to the grocery and I buy whatever I need. Of course, we got to still stay within a budget. But we ain't budgeting drug money in there no more. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that awesome? Isn't that a great feeling? So, anyway, dear loved one, I'm going to cut this off now. But we do have the WhatsApp group going, the Breaking My Addiction WhatsApp group. We have had some new people pop in. It's been pretty fun. We're getting to know some new people. We just ask, don't be trying to promote anything. Don't be trying to sell anything or whatever. This is for support and encouragement. And there's lots of subgroups. Like we've got one for jokes and stuff. And yeah, it can get a little offensive, and that's okay. That's all right. We're all adults here. If you don't like it, you can not join that subgroup, right? So there's that. But anyway, it's the Breaking My Addiction. I'll have to, there's a link for it in the notes. But besides that, dear loved one, that's what I got for you. I love you. I do. And I will be back directly.